Building a digital product is complex, demanding, uncertain. And that's where we come in. We're a group of creative thinkers, digital product specialists, dreamers, and team players. With over 15 years in the industry, 350 innovators, 50 awards, building over 150 digital products for our global customers. We engage in your awesome idea and help bring it to life. 99X Technology is now 99X. We're tech team players.
We are the architects of smart future. We envision for the global community. With the world's growing, it is natural to experience environmental, health, and social and economic challenges. By constantly revisiting our guiding light, our mission of enabling Industry 4.0 in Sri Lanka, we enhance the quality of life for everyone. Oral IT has proven its R&D capabilities in computer vision, natural language processing, and predictive analytics support improved efficiency. We specialize in data annotation, visual tasking, and technological product development services drawing on artificial intelligence. From object identification to progress environmental conservation, our expert AI teams pioneer cutting-edge research and formulate contemporary solutions across 13 industries. We now maintain 4 branches across Sri Lanka, working closely with top international clients.
Your fashion brand is growing rapidly, but a new reality is challenging the way you currently do business. Modern shoppers want a single, coherent experience no matter how and where they shop, and access to more styles more often with intuitive delivery and hassle-free return methods. Unfortunately, the technology and processes you use to run your business today are not geared to deliver the omni-channel needs of tomorrow. And you can't afford to spend 12 months implementing a new system while keeping the lights on. That's why we are bringing the game-changing power of SAP Fashion Management as a rapid deployment solution, the Attune Fashion Suite. SAP Fashion Management delivers all the functionality needed to run an omni-channel fashion brand in the digital age, including global inventory visibility, a 360-degree view of your customers, optimal inventory allocation, and real-time analytics. The Attune Fashion Suite accelerates its deployment by reducing the implementation time by up to 40%, covers up to 80% of a typical fashion company's business requirements with over 50 industry best practice processes, and is built on our unmatched experience in the fashion industry and knowledge as the co-innovation partner of SAP FMS. The Attune Fashion Suite is the fastest and most proven path to a digitally enabled fashion operation, and available at a cost that won't keep you up at night. Visit attuneconsulting.com/fashion suite to learn more.
This is one way of showing convenience, and MySLT is just another name for convenience. Services here, there, and everywhere. Now brought under MySLT. Access all of SLT Mobitel services through one app. SLT Mobitel, the connection.
Welcome again. For any questions, the Padlet link will be shared in the chat, and you can access that and drop in your questions while the session is ongoing. To introduce our speaker for the evening, Mr. Oshan Samaranayaka, the Chief Delivery Officer at Ascend Technologies. He's an individual with a variety of knowledge and a veteran in the field, and I'm sure he'll be happy to share his expertise with us today. Mr. Oshan, over to you.
Hi, Hiruni and everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Super. So this is going to be a Q. I'm going to run this with a bit of Q&A as well. So interaction. So Hiruni, I hope people will be able to send in their responses on the chat. I hope chat is open for everybody.
A Padlet link has been shared, so they can leave their questions there. I think
Okay.
you can access it from the link.
Let me check whether the link works. Give me a couple of minutes.
Yes, sure thing.
Where is it shared, Hiruni?
It's in the chat. Just hold on.
I can't see though.
I think it's yet to be shared. Yes.
Got it. Loading it. So people can send in the responses on that, right?
Yes. People can ask any questions they have on this, and
Sure. So let me start by sharing my presentation. Can you guys see my screen?
yes, we can.
Cool. So thanks everybody. I was surprised to see this many people joining on a Sunday evening. So the topic I plan to cover today is idea to product. There are so many ways people take an idea and then take it, develop it into a product. There are low fidelity MVPs, financial feasibilities. You do all those things, market research, surveys. But there are so many ways to skin a cat, right? So today I'm going to give you a few tips. I'll explain how we do it at Ascend, and how from an entrepreneurial perspective, as well as from a startup company perspective, how you have to be careful about a few pointers. So basically those are going to be the, that is going to be the approach today. It's a bit informal. And again, I'm going to ask a few questions. I hope you guys can ask questions on, respond to the questions on the link. So moving on, what is a good idea? So the first question a lot of people have is, can an idea be patented? Sorry, there's a typo in that slide. You can't patent an idea. So for it to be patented, it has to be an invention. And an invention, for an invention again to be patented, you have to show utility. You have to show how to implement it. So this presentation is not to cover that. But this is a misconception a lot of people have. You get a good idea and you try to patent it. So that is not the path to take. But you need to see whether it's a good idea. So everybody has a lot of ideas. So even at Azen, we get 1,000 ideas. So we only take forward about 5 or less than 5. So we have come up with a scorecard where we give each idea about half an hour, because at the rate we get ideas, if you spend a lot of time on an idea, you will be wasting time spending like analyzing on all ideas. So you have to have a filtration process. So how do you know that this idea is good? First question you have to ask is whether that will solve a problem or an issue. If it doesn't do that, then the probability of using it is going to be very low. Let's take a few examples. If you take Uber, people say that Uber is it's a disruptive idea, right? So, but then again, that idea came up because one of the founders had an issue, because they hired a taxi for like $800, I think, for that day, and then he was thinking how he can reduce this if there was a concept of ride sharing. So again, just because it solves a problem, like you have to make sure that you have to work towards coming up with a product that will actually address it. But first of all, you have to find the idea, find the issue, find the problem, right? So always a good idea that will take off will always solve a problem. A lot of people miss this point when they think that they had a good idea. So first of all, you need to figure out whether somebody else has done it, then what has happened to it if they have done it, why they failed if they have failed. Again, for that failure, there will be issues. So then you have to analyze, okay, what are those issues? How do you tackle these issues? That will become a good product, end of the day, right? And another famous quote that Steve Jobs has said is, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. So again, Uber. So that person had a problem. He came up with a solution, but there would have been 1 million people who have said it's not going to work. So even though you come up with a solution for a problem, as I told you, there are many ways to skin a cat, right? So you might come up with a solution, but there will be a lot of naysayers. So here again, this comes up a lot at when we develop products at Azen, right? So people will ask questions. Okay, how should we address this? What will happen if this happens? So, for example, if you take a Uber ride for an example, you get into a vehicle of a person that you don't know, right? So let's say Uber is not existent, so that concept is unheard of. If you take this idea and tell somebody, I want to do this, I want to get anybody to be able to give taxi rides to anybody. So the first question a person would ask is, who will get into another unknown person's car? That is going to be the biggest critique. But still, they found ways around it. It's the second hurdle. Okay, right? So you might have a good idea. Then you have a rough solution. but that solution will spawn another whole heap of issues that, because it's a problem in this world, nobody has found a solution for. So when you come up with the solution, there will be a lot of naysayers. As a lot of famous people who hit big says, don't listen to naysayers, try to overcome those obstacles. So there might be people who give you valid feedback as well, with not exactly valid, I got it wrong. So there will be people who have best intentions in their heads about you, might want to caution you, right? So they might say, don't do this, it's a waste of time, I don't think it's going to work. That is something that you have to shut yourself out of, right? So if you think this is a good idea, if you think it's solving a problem, then don't listen to naysayers. As Steve Jobs said, people don't know what they want until you show it to them, right? So that is the second biggest takeaway from this presentation. The biggest takeaway is going to come later on, right? So again, let's take another example. Like we took Uber, which is a disruptive solution to a problem, right? There might be solutions to problems that people see, but others won't see it. For example, Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk came up with solar, he came up with PayPal, right? But long before we were used to that concept. Then he came up with solar panel business for the finer points, but that also was ahead of his time, of its time. And then he started making electric cars, and he started developing cars and started challenging car manufacturers who were like 70, 60 years in the business, who had so much resources, who had so much technology, R&D labs, know-how. He challenged everybody. So if somebody, have you heard of the term called reinventing the wheel? So reinventing the wheel. So people would have said, why are you reinventing the wheel? Cars are already available. There are companies like Honda, Toyota, they have their own technologies, right? Battery technologies, hybrid technologies. Then what are those hydrogen car technologies? So why do you want to develop technology that is already being developed with a lot of people, with a lot of companies that have so much resources at their they can use. So again, another example is Zoom, the application that we use right now. So the founder of Zoom was a member of WebEx. I don't know how many of you know WebEx. If you were working in an IT company in the early 2000s to let's say 2005-6 onwards till about 2015, WebEx would have been the tool to use for these conferences. So WebEx is an enterprise tool. I'm just telling for people who don't know about it, right? So that is a tool where you have hardware as well as software. So you can connect the video conferencing units to the software, and then you can run your conferences on an enterprise level. So when you talk about enterprises, nothing is free. So you have to pay good money for it, and it was a Cisco company. So one of the members at WebEx had an idea to give this service free of charge, take it out of enterprise, take it to the masses, took 40 people from WebEx and started Zoom. It was called something else, but they later had the name Zoom, right? So at that time, people thought this guy is reinventing the wheel. What is this? We already have an established product with hardware as well as software solutions called WebEx. They already have Cisco's backing, and they already have so many enterprise customers. Even WebEx is still available right now. But the two most famous video conferencing apps right now are Zoom and Teams, right? So there there are complex AI backends where now they have developed it so much now that it's very hard to replicate. So this is what he did was not copying it, but he saw a problem, which is people who have like small businesses or individuals doesn't have a proper tool to do remote sessions. So then he addressed that. Again, he was running this, he was developing this for 2 to 3 years. So it's not like you get an idea, okay, you get a set of people, you spend 6 months, put it out, and it's successful. It's not like that. So you have to, again, go through the phases. I'm not going to touch all the phases of an idea to product because those are already available on the net, or you can take a course. There are so many courses free of charge. So those are things that you can just easily go on Google and search and understand. So what I'm giving you are like small pointers to point you in the correct direction, as well as some things that we have learned while doing this, right? Moving on. Disruptive. Again, it's a buzzword. Everybody's talking about it. What is disruptive? What are the disruptive products? Can you guys tell me what you know about disruptive products? Examples. How do you get to this link? Can you guys send me disruptive idea? Netflix, okay, that's a good one. Anything else? Do you think disruptive works? Or do you think you have to wreck your brain to find a disruptive product? Okay, Hyperloop, SpaceX. Yeah, so those are like the technologically advanced solutions. Yeah. Yeah, Google Chrome, yeah. Google itself, yeah. Exactly. Those are good examples. Airbnb, more than Hyperloop, I think these are, so disruptive is something that disrupts the existing place. So Hyperloop is something that is not disruptive, but it's innovative. So basically, Airbnb, what it did was it took out people owning companies owning a single company owning a lot of real estate. It just opened its doors out to people who actually have real estate, houses, bungalows, or whatever. So that business model was shifted. Uber, similarly. Smartphone also disrupted the phone market. Those are Wikipedia again, yeah, good examples. Wheel, I don't think so. You can, yeah, maybe. So yeah, cool. Netflix again is a very good example of disruptive concepts. There were TV, and then there was YouTube, and then there was Netflix. So Netflix produces their own movies like a huge production house, and TV series. So that's a major disruptive product. So moving on to the slide deck. Give me a second. Let me switch. People want to come up with disruptive ideas. Like so there is a limit to how you can disrupt. For you to disrupt effectively, you have to. It's pretty rare, right? So don't go after disruption all the time. If you can, from addressing the solution to that problem, if you disrupt something, again, Steve Jobs quote: "People don't know what they want until you show it to them." But the result might be disruptive, but if it's an idea that solves problems, so that's a good idea to take forward to a product. Okay, moving on. how do you add value to an idea? So how do you take it forward to a product, right? How do you monetize it? How do you how do you place it in the market? How do you add brand value and scalability? Okay. How do you monetize it? So some people fail because they don't think about how you monetize it. So you might have a good idea. For example, say, let's say you come up with this idea for a Wikipedia, right? So Wikipedia is a totally free of charge service, but how do you monetize it? So because you have to have, so you have costs, right? When you run something online, you have costs. Maybe it doesn't have to be online product. It might be something else, like a product that you produce, hardware unit or something, right? So you have to think about how you have to plan how you monetize it as well. So people like concepts like Uber, they are still expanding. So through adoption, they create value. One way to do it is if you develop a phone app, if you can make a lot of people use it, so that means downloads. So if you have a lot of downloads, then you can show when you come to valuation of this company or the product, if you have so many users using it, that adds value. So that will be you'll be able to monetize it later on if you have a massive user base. Or again, if it's patented, where you have an innovation that you can patent, then you can later produce it without any worry about somebody else stealing it. But then again, in this day and age, people, if people steal, you need investment to go to courts as well. So it's not an easy game, right? So again, I'm going to skip branding and marketing to scalability. I'll come to branding and marketing, right? So scalability is the biggest takeaway from this session. That is the biggest point I want to tell you guys about. You will have a solution to a problem, but how can you scale it? Let's start from this. Let's say, forget about the solution to a problem. Let's say you come up with this new coffee and you want to open a restaurant, right? So you open the restaurant without thinking about scalability. Then people come to it. They see the idea. They see that it works. You get a lot of customers. Then a person with a lot of cash in the bank will see this idea, and he will open out 50 more restaurants across the island. So now you haven't thought about scalability. So no matter how good the idea is, the other guy is going to win because he has put about 50 other outlets. Same thing happened to McDonald's. The McDonald's brothers, they were very slow. They were thinking about franchising, but very slow. But then again, the next dude came with the idea, so he started innovating. And then again, McDonald's is a global business, but it's not owned by the two brothers who started it, right? So scalability is the number one takeaway from this session. So always think about scalability right at the start. When you have an idea and when you want to develop that into a product, number one takeaway is scalability. You have to think about scalability all the time. So let's say now you're trying to get people on board. When you want to let people know about this idea or the product, first you have to have the scalability plan. If you don't have that, people might steal your ideas, because at the start I said you can't patent ideas. So you have to have, by the time you put it out, there are people called angel investors. There are genuine angel investors, and there are people who say that they are angel investors, but they are in the scene to steal ideas. They have the money to invest. So you have to be very careful about this particular factor. So let's move away from a coffee shop into a product. Let's say a product like let's say product like Uber. So you need to have technology capable enough to handle the load of a lot of people coming onto the platform and be able to function properly without issues so that people won't get discouraged while using it. You have to have plans for those also before taking it out to the market. So you might not have actually implemented those, but you need to have plans for that. Like at the time of this load on the system, what do you do next? What do you do next? If you start thinking about those issues at those points, you will waste time and you will lose the market share. For example, after Uber, there were so many competitor products that came up. And there are scenarios where in some countries, Uber actually has lost the battle against those other competitor products. So it's not a very rosy, it's a real world, right? So survival of the fittest. So no matter what idea or innovation you have, if you haven't thought about scalability, it's actually going to be taken away from you. So that is the other key factor that I wanted to tell you guys about. The other factor is branding and marketing. That is another thing that you forget when you want to take an idea and build a product. So when you're building an idea into a product, you have to always, in parallel, think about how you are going to build the brand and how you are going to take it to market. So a lot of people fail at the product, like in a product life cycle, right? So from idea to product, there will be many MVPs. MVP is a minimal viable product, right? So day one, it's MVP 1, then it's MVP 2. So people always get lost in that. So they decide, okay, for MVP 1, we are going to have these features. Then for MVP 2, we are going to have these features. But in parallel, you need to have a marketing plan, a marketing budget. So you need to, these days, marketing is not that expensive. There are social media options. There are free of charge platforms where you can take your brand into the masses. So those plans also nail down strategically. So during your idea to product phase, you will be doing a few surveys, right? So you will be checking whether the market is ready for this product. So you can use all these channels as well. You can tap into these free of charge platforms to check the market condition, whether the market is receptive, whether this will become a success. So depending on those marketing feedback, also you can change the features slightly, fine tune them, and make sure that the product succeeds later on. So it's not going to be a rosy picture where MVP 1 is going to be a towering success. You're going to have 1 million. If it does, it's fantastic. But most of the time, it's not. And then you need to fine tune it, change according to the market. But then again, for you to know about that, you need to market it. Otherwise, you won't give the product a fair chance. So from idea to product, it doesn't stop, right? So idea to product, and then MVP 1, MVP 2, MVP 3. And again, there are so many things that people say that you have to do. From idea to product, you need to do feasibility studies, you need to do financial analysis. Don't get lost in details also. If you think that you have an idea that will solve a problem, do the feasibility, make sure that you do the feasibility. I'm not telling you not to avoid doing those, but somehow get through those hurdles by being innovative. So if the feasibility study says you need $1 million for this, so we can't do it. But if you still see that this will solve a good problem that a lot of people have, you'll be able to find a way to maybe get seed funding or by showing the solution, or get other investors, pre-seed investors like your friends or somebody to invest in this idea so that you can take it to market. So don't get discouraged by those hurdles. These are just tips for you to somehow persevere and then get it out. again, at which point do you take it to production? So as I said, Zoom, they took 3 years for the product to go live, and then they made profits, as in they started earning money only after, I think, about 5 years. So that's a long time. A lot of people would have given up. So what they did was, you have this funding rounds. So again, before getting into funding, what are you going to take to production? You might want to put a perfect solution into production. Okay, so you have now decided the product, right? So now you have solved the problems that you have. Now this is the time to decide, okay, point do I take this to production? First of all, you have to think a perfect, if you try to do this as a perfect product, you will never be able to take it to production. So there is no perfect product. Even Microsoft still, after decades of being launched, have still issues. So you should not be a perfectionist if you're trying to take a product to market. That is another tip that we always follow. There shouldn't be showstoppers, but there should be a give and take, basically. So you need to have the minimum viable, that's what the MVP is called, minimum viable product. So why is it called minimum? Because you have to do the least you can to take it to production, because you always think that, okay, now you have a product, you always feel that people might want this, people might want that, people might think about it like this. These are all perceptions, because at this stage, you don't have money to do a proper market research. You don't have money to, if you have money, that's fine, that's perfectly all right, but I don't think you will come to this session if you had money to do a market research by giving it to a good market research company, right? You have to blow a few millions for that. So since you don't have money to do that, you need to put it to market and then gauge the response and then do MVP 1, 2, 3, right? So the best way to make sure that your product is working properly is to put it to market and see how the people respond to it. And then there's this other rule called the 80-20 rule. So 20% of the features will actually make 80% of the users satisfied. So even if you're a perfectionist and you want to get 100% of the product working and working to your satisfaction, actually 20% will be making the customers happy. So you need to identify what that 20% is. So taking it to production is, with the MVP features, is it's going to be important, right? Moving on, funding. So when it comes to funding, there are, when you have an idea, for you to take it up to product, you will need money, right? So funding starts with pre-seed funding. What is pre-seed funding? So pre-seed funding is people who are known to you or the founders themselves putting in money. So normally, seed funding is where seed funding and series funding who give their money in exchange for equity. But here, what happens is people who actually start this company puts in money so that the product can be taken to market, right? So, or to taken up to a seed funding session, because you can't just take an idea. You might be able to pull it off, but for seed funding, you need to show something, right? So otherwise, people might not put in the investment that you actually can. Like there might be people with a lot of money who would put 500,000 instead of a few millions. So pre-seed funding is that, like friends and family putting in money so that you get support, and then seed funding is where the angel investors and when you start opening out for people to come and give money in exchange for equity. So that's where you have the funding rounds. A lot of products will not go beyond this. There are some products which are called unicorn products these days, with the technology boom, that after seed funding have taken off, and then they have gone into IPO. So IPO is initial public offering listed in the stock market, opening it out to the masses, but in terms of through shares. But seed funding is the first round where you get other external parties to come and invest in the working product or the almost working product, or if you're lucky, in the idea. Then you have the series A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, those funding rounds. Like for example, PicMe has gone through several rounds of seed funding, and they have amassed a lot of investment, which they in turn will use for their product development as well as marketing. And then finally, if this is successful, if you're earning money or if you have a massive user base, sometimes you might have a massive user base, but you might not be earning money or turning out profits. But still, that massive user base takes money to develop, right? So if you have a lot of users, that means you have invested a lot of money in acquiring them. So that also has a value. So those are all key things to add value. And the other thing is brand. So if you have a brand, if you have built up a brand, then it's hard for competitors to come and compete because you have already built up a brand. So people, it's like how another normal fashion shop will fight against Odell, because Odell has already built up a brand. That brand has been built up over so many years. Now that value is enormous that it's very hard to compete. So Cotton Collection wanted to compete, but they were again bought over by Odell. So anyway, so those are the things that add value, because you need to have a valuation when it comes to seed funding. So those are the things that add value to the company. That is the session. It's I saw a few questions, so I'm going to move into the questions part. Can we have our design for the initial pitch, then have the working product later? Yes. So initial pitch, I assume, is going to be at the seed funding level. So you have a pitch to attract investors, right? You can have your design for the initial pitch. Even for a patent, you can just have the design, but make sure that you have covered the scalable options, where as soon as you get funding, you can scale it. So that is what I wanted to again highlight. Make sure you cover all bases. What are the questions to ask yourself while brainstorming good ideas? Okay, that's what I said. So will it solve a problem that exists in the world? If it does, you have a good idea. It doesn't have to be disruptive also. If you're lucky, it will be disruptive. But if it solves a problem, that means you're on the right track. How can you identify the best technology to use to execute your tasks? Okay, so here you need to get help from subject matter experts. So you can't, like people who are in the industry have amassed so much experience over years while working on major platforms. So tap those resources, tap those contacts that you have. And the other best way is to somehow, if you can, work in an incubator. So in an incubator, or like in a places like all these startup ecosystems, where you have so many companies working together. So for example, you might be developing a product that might need another technology. Let's say you want your teleconferencing product software, but now you need the hardware. So in that ecosystem, you might have another company who's developing cameras. So then you might be able to, it'll be very easy, like you just walk over to their office and then you talk and you develop new ideas, because that company is also startup. They might be, they will listen to your ideas as well. So that's one. Other one is tap into the subject matter experts, talk to them and see from experience what advice they give. What are the best tips to follow when creating an ideation framework? Okay, so there are many ways. Like at Zentek, we have a to qualify an idea, we have a checklist. Earlier, we are not. If you have a massive structured process, you might waste time on so many ideas, where you can actually spend that time on planning and developing good ideas that come through the filter. So we have a 30-minute filter where an idea can be filtered, scored against certain factors. And then again, against those, if you score well, that idea goes to the next session, which is maybe design thinking, like maybe we will do prototyping. Those things will be taken forward using those concepts. So, okay, so those are like, have a quick method to filter out ideas. So again, what are the factors? So one factor is, again, as I always say, does it address an issue? Number two, what are the competitor products? Again, issue might not be you innovating a solution. Issue might be there might be a very expensive solution in the market, like WebEx and Zoom. Right now, Zoom is a $1 billion company. They offer it free of charge with a few. So this Zoom I'm using right now, it's free of charge. So you can check what are the competitors. You can do a SWOT. Okay, so what are they offering? Can you give it at a cheaper rate or free of charge? So you have to do a competitor analysis, and then you have to see, okay, there might be competitors. What is their market share? So some of this data you might not be able to get it, but you doing a bit of Google searching, reading a few market research journals which are already available online might help you, right? So there are certain, like, other thing is how complicated is going to be the solution. Sometimes there is another, there might be a catchy thing which you might be able to develop cheap and fast. So those things can be easily replicated. So those are the things that you have to consider. Can it be easily replicated? If so, can you patent it? If you can't patent it, then it doesn't get a good score. But if you can patent it, then it will go to the next stage. If it can be easily replicated. But if it can't be easily replicated, you don't have to worry about patents because people can't replicate it. So then again, take it to the next stage. You don't have to worry about patenting it right now. So you can come up with your own scorecard, and there are a few available online as well. Okay, I'm moving on to the next question because there are about 3 or 4 more. What is the best methodology to follow when doing background research for your idea? There isn't a methodology. Use Google, use the online tools you have. The more research you do, the better outcome will be a standard, right? So, yeah. Is it considered a good idea when I come up with an app that is already available, but it includes unique features? Yeah, so it will, but how easily will people be able to replicate it? So if an app is already available in the market, once they see your product, they might actually do it as well. And since they have already captured the market, they might you might not be able to dent their market share, right? So you have to think about how you are going to. So for example, like again the same example, WebEx and Zoom. Zoom, they are one of their first hires has been artificial intelligence related engineers, right? So they have made sure that the unique feature that they are going to offer will be developed over 3 years and then put to market. by that time, the competition would have 3 years or like a longer time to compete. So if it's something like that, again, that makes sense. So if it's a feature that you have already done a lot of research on, and it's a complicated feature that it's very hard for people to replicate, then no problem. But if it's a straightforward feature, it's very easy to replicate, then don't do it. Because the already established apps will copy it and then they will continue to run. Again, another good example is WhatsApp. There are so many chat apps. There are Facebook had Messenger. Then there were so many other Yahoo Messenger, MSN Messenger. But WhatsApp came up with a very easy to use, simple product. A lot of people didn't give it a chance. A lot of people used it, but they didn't think that it'll hit big like that. So the idea behind WhatsApp was, monetization idea was to have adoption and then sell the company. So they were running at a cost, they were running at a loss, but they were quickly gaining users. A lot of people were using it because it was very easy to use. They had those concepts where those features were like, whether you have seen the message or like groups. So still Messenger also had those, but WhatsApp was easier to use, right? So his method was to get a lot of people. So if you want to do another WhatsApp, you need to, because you need to sustain this product for so many years until a lot of people use it. So for example, if it's a simple app that 1 million or like 10 million users are going to use, you're going to burn a lot of money to host it, because the production load is going to be so much and the capability of the servers are going to be so much that you will need to have money in the bank. But later on, it was sold for like $7 billion, right? So then the gain is there, but you need to make sure that you have money to put in at the start. If you don't have money, it wouldn't have been successful. If WhatsApp started getting stuck and if WhatsApp messages were bigger due to the load, you lose messages or some production issue like that, then people will again stop using it, right? So that's a good example. Another good example is sorry, I forgot it. So yeah, so WhatsApp is one of those examples for features that are easy to implement, but that the plan of launch was that you have a lot of money to gain adoption. So it all depends on the variables that you have at play. How I could survive in the market with a non-monetary solution? Yeah, that's the thing. So you need to have money if it's a non-monetary solution. If your plan is to have people using it, I think my earlier response answered that. So if you have money, again, you can run it. So that's the plan. But if you don't have money, you can maybe take it to seed investing. But if it's a simple solution, then a lot of people might not risk with their money in investing. So yeah. Then how does consumer perspective affect the product design? Again, twofold. So consumer perspective, from that I mean feedback as well, right? So consumer perspective will affect product design because you're making something for people to use, but you should not always listen to all the feedback. Again, revisiting what Steve Jobs said, people don't know what they wanted until you show it to them, right? So sometimes you can do that, but you need to have a brand behind you to do that as well. But right at the start, you will have to listen to your customers, because the consumers, because product design will have to be driven by their pain points. So even if your product is addressing a solution to a problem, but while doing that, if the user goes through a few other more pain points, you need to quickly adjust to those. People will not be trying hard to use your app just because it's there. It has to be easy to use, right? So that's going to be 100%. Any other questions? If not, I'm done. TikTok. Yeah. So, guys, I think we're done. Time is up as well.
I think that's all the questions we have. I see some people typing. Guys, if you do have any questions, please drop them in the Padlet.
Sure.
No, but I think that's all we have for evening.
Sure.
So thank you, Mr. Oshan, for the very informative session. And I'm sure our participants garnered a wealth of knowledge from it. And thank you to our gold sponsor, Azen Technologies. And a huge thank you goes out to our audience today. We hope you learned something new and interesting. And do keep an eye out for our social media channels with regards to the upcoming awareness sessions from the club. And any questions regarding the hackathon can be clarified through our channels as well. A quick reminder that the registrations for OpenHack will be closing at midnight today. So make sure to submit your proposals before that. And with that, we can successfully conclude our second awareness session and hope to see all of you in our next session. Have a wonderful night.
All right. Thank you. Bye.